What's up, y'all? How are you? How are you? What's up? What's up? What's up? Our first IMATS Atlanta, right? I tell you, you always give me such a warm reception. Y'all have to remember, see, I'm old, so I remember coming here for Bronner Brothers in '89, and if you remember that, you old too. But the beauty of being here, it definitely makes me feel like home, and you get to see so many wonderful artists that you love and admire, from Danessa Meyerix to all my Makeup Forever people, and just really wonderful, wonderful people. So I always like to start with a few questions to understand what you guys want to see, but you know I have something in mind as well, right?
Yeah.
Good. Oh, all these videos, make sure to tag me. I'm at I am Sam Fine, so I can have something to post. So y'all came here with no questions? Oh, okay, go ahead. What is my best tip for skin-like finish? You're going to see it. I can show you better than I can tell you.
Sounds great.
And I have to say, I mean, part of my presentation and what I'm going to talk about when I'm doing makeup is, you know, so many people talk about the rates that we make as makeup artists, upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 a day. And I have to tell you, the jobs that are paying that aren't the jobs that really require some of the makeup that you see and some of the most beautiful makeup that you see in editorial. So when I got in this morning at 5:30, and I just left Queen Latifah for a commercial. The skin-like finish and what you have to translate, you know, just to make skin look like skin and contour and highlights look natural, that is really what you get paid the big bucks for. It's not the biggest lash. It's not the most highlighted cheekbone. It's really a beautiful finish. And when I look back at so much of the work that I've done, whether it's Jennifer Hudson for Weight Watchers, or Tyra Banks for Victoria's Secrets, or Queen Latifah for CoverGirl, you're lucky to say that when that client says to you, today we're going to use green eyeshadow. But that's the fun of makeup. But for the most part, where the big bucks come from, when you're talking about Good Morning America, when you're talking about going to do Gabrielle Union for Neutrogena, my mind is working now. When you're talking about those type of jobs, it's not the biggest lash. It may not be a lash at all. So I know that so much of what we're seeing in social media is so entertaining. I get caught up in it myself. But what's so important to remember as a pro who wants a career that speaks to longevity is about learning the basics. So y'all will always hear, every product, every book, every DVD that I speak to will always speak to the basics. A tissuing off of foundation for that skin-like finish. I see heads nodding. Because what happens is, these are the keys that keep you working. I mean, I'm happy to do the editorial and the fun stuff with Kerry Washington and Iman. But when it comes to cosmetics, when it comes to the Met, when it comes to the Oscars, you see beautiful makeup, but it's not nearly overwhelming or as outstanding as sometimes even we would like as makeup artists. I think it's important for us to know the gamut and how to deal with discoloration and uniting those varied tones in the skin. Those are the things that keep you what? Working. Exactly. So they only working in the front? Is that it? Let's take a question. I'm just pointing at somebody because I'm sure someone back there has a question. See, I was right. What's up? And I'm going to get Jacqueline to run around with a mic. Thank you.
I just want to say I love your makeup. I love the person that you are. I do appreciate you. But my question is, what is your best tip that you can give a working makeup artist or an aspiring makeup artist as far as making it in the world today, especially for like social media and as working on your portfolio as an artist?
Do we even call our work a portfolio anymore? I mean, nowadays I don't even get a call for a portfolio. So, you know, when I think about marketing your skills today, and I have to think about it as well, whether there are companies who are looking for you to help them brand their brands or utilize their products for product launches, I'm still marketing myself as well. My following still matters. So I hope all of y'all follow me. But the most important thing is trying to be true to yourself as an artist. You can't be all things to all people. So for me, I think it's always about a perspective. It's so important to have a perspective as an artist. When you guys go back 10, 20, almost 30 years and look at Vanessa Williams, one of my longest running clients from 25 years ago. I mean, you know, I remember doing her for the Grammys when she was singing Save the Best for Last. So when I talk about going backwards and looking at your work and what stands for your name, if that's a red lip, if that's a brow, if that's skin, whatever your perspective is, exploit that. And I think that that is the best calling card because that's what people remember, what you leave them with. It's that one piece, whether it's if you're a lip person, if you're a skin person, if you're a contour and highlight person, let that be your calling card. Of course, it'll always change. There are always new products, but marketing yourself and engaging in social media and also being present and understanding that everything's not meant for social media. I love that stories go away. I love that you can pull up highlights. What's up, girl? I sent you a message. You didn't respond. Whatever. My artist friends. I love you. Thanks for coming, Deshaun. So it's important to have a perspective. And I can't say that enough. So sometimes even when I'm thinking about creating something for social media or posting something, I'm always thinking, how does this fit into my brand? How is this, what message am I going to inspire? Whether it's a Throwback Thursday with Veronica Webb and very little makeup on, there's a message to that. I mean, because I think we all know that we can do makeup and do great brows and utilize all these wonderful products, but I think it's important to have a perspective and to be able to put that on social media because that is now our working portfolio, as crazy as that may sound to someone as old as me. So I'm going to take one more question. Go ahead.
Okay, how you doing?
I'm good, and you?
You have the younger women and the older women, so what kind of advice would you give for the older women? Because I know some people don't apply the same makeup for younger to the older, but how do you...
Did y'all hear her question?
Yeah.
She's saying, what's the difference between applying makeup to a younger model or celebrity versus an older one? Look, I just did Nancy Wilson for her 80th birthday. I started my career with Patti LaBelle when I was 21 and she was late 40s, maybe early 50s. You know, worked with Gladys Knight, Eartha Kitt, Oprah. I know, where's Derek? Child. I just did her a few times. But I have to tell you, there's no difference. Even though I'm going to bring out a beautiful model, concealer and foundation do the same job. The difference is the effect that it has on the person you're working on. Does that make sense? So just because I'm not bringing out someone with great discoloration or very puffy lids or a great deal of discoloration doesn't mean that I would change the way I do makeup because of those things. And of course you're going to have to work around the eyes a bit more. You know, it's more fragile. But when I work on someone like Iman, who's 60 years old, 60 years young, it's about finding a look that's classic. And if you see my mom in Fine Beauty, you know it's about finding that look and hanging out there. Even as Queen Latifah approaches 49, it's just about saying classic. Not only do I have to not worry about going back and looking at my work and feeling like it was such a trend, I also can look forward and feel like I'm setting the pace and something for them to follow. It's them. So whether that means a little bit more cream foundation, which I enjoy, I'm a cream foundation guy. Anyone who's ever followed my career knows that cream foundation for me is the easiest product to use to build coverage. I use Dermablend, I use Black Opal, I use AJ Crimson. I think everyone has such great things to offer. But to bring out the glow and to use Danessa Myricks, the liquid, y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm bad with names, good with products. But to be able to incorporate trends, I think is what makes the difference in your artistry. It's not specifically changing your hand every time you go to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, we're not magicians, and I think it's very hard to keep putting on a different pair of shoes every day. So what I try to do is stay true to myself and my artistry and find a place where that lives. So there's a range of what I do. You know what I mean? And so whether that's to, someone who is, as young as Tyra when I started working with her at 17, or whether it's someone as mature as Iman at 60. I mean, you still compare the trends, but you have to know when to pull off and when to enjoy the trends. Because if I were to do Patty today and put electric blue eyeshadow, she's gonna look like she's in LaBelle. She's not gonna look like she's living the trend today. And so that's kind of the difference, and that's the best analogy I can make when you really talk about the colors that we use and how you address women of color at a certain age. But like I said, you have to find your makeup personality, and I think that's key. And we're all still catering to our clients. So I'm gonna get started, but I'm gonna take another question. My Afro sister, go ahead. Come on out here, Gina. Give her a warm welcome, y'all. Y'all saw her up here doing a makeup test. I like to keep my job simple, so I bring beauty with me everywhere I go. Go ahead. No, it's not that kind of show today. Yeah, that's that. Yeah. And if you caught me doing CoverGirl at Essence Music Festival, you'd be my next model. But today, no, really. I mean, you all know I feel like everything that I do should translate to real women. So much of what we do in performance is about knowing a face that we can easily address while we take questions and give you guys our best. But thank you for the offer. So, when I think about those money jobs and when I think about foundation and powder and that first question about a flawless finish, that flawless finish begins with for me, with foundation. So the first thing I'm gonna start with is moisturizer. How many people in the audience, just by a show of hands, use cream foundation? Who doesn't really feel comfortable with creams today? Good, I love it. No, raise them high. Why not? Say again, I'm sorry. It's what?
Heavy.
It's heavy for you sometimes. Okay, I hear that. I think it's important to, see, I can't see the monitors, so Yannick, you have to be my eyes. Oh, that's good, I like my number one. Thank you. Thanks, George. So, I'm gonna start with foundation. I'm sorry, with moisturizer. Jeez, I do it so often I forget. So, I do hear that a lot of people, sometimes they feel that cream can be heavy. But what happens when you have a woman of color who, I shot a commercial for 12 hours. I've shot a music video for 24 hours. What do you do when you need makeup to last? Do you keep reapplying it? It's more challenging. So when you talk about getting comfortable with skin, I feel that foundation, cream foundation, to me is the beginning of every great look. It helps me to contour and highlight in a way that allows it to sit on the skin so much more beautifully and bake in even as the day goes by. And, I've been on sets where I've seen people have to, reapply concealer or reapply, foundation or cover a certain area. It's one thing if someone has blown their nose or wiped their face, but it's another thing to have a base. I mean, really, when you think of the word foundation, it stands for so much more. This is your bra and panties. This is your girdle. This is your space. This is allowing everything else to flow on so beautifully and so effortlessly that by the time I'm thinking, y'all, I'm sorry. By the time you go on to apply something else, you know that it'll grab. So when you're applying bronzer and highlighter, you know that it'll have something to sit on. And that's what I'm thinking when I'm doing concealer and foundation in cream. So I'm gonna start out with, a cream foundation from AJ Crimson. For me, concealer doesn't have to be the exact color unless I'm going to only apply concealer. Does that make sense? If you're just doing touch concealer, then it's gotta match that area specifically. If not, it's almost like spackle to a wall. Does that make sense? Spackle doesn't come in different colors, so I'm just putting something down that's relative to her complexion so that when I cover it, I still get a little bit of boost underneath it. Make sense? Oh, that don't make sense? Yeah. You know I like audience participation, y'all. Thank you. I see, you know, it's always the ones in the front. So cool. So I'm just gonna lay this down, and I love that it's kind of an orangey, peachy color. For me, it's light. It shows you that I'm going up a few notches. And I just throw this down. You know, and it's funny, when I think about going back to teaching, you know, my first class at Bronner Brothers in '98, I think about how little we knew about the diagram of the face and how to place light and highlights and contour. And we've grown so much and become so educated. So feel free, I know you guys know a ton about all of this, but feel free to ask your questions. So a lot of times I'll take my finger, and especially to, what's my friend who said that cream foundation can be heavy? Oh, she left. Oh no, I was like, wait, you and y'all changing seats? What's your name? So CC, I'm gonna address the CCs of the world who think that cream foundation can be heavy, because you're right, it is. But you as an artist, it's important to learn even more how to manipulate it, how to use it in a way that you can get the best and the most out of it. Someone was asking me earlier, what's the normal amount of time, as if normal's, you know, even is the issue. Normal amount of time to work on a face. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've worked on anything from, you know, 15 to 20 minutes, and I have to say the basics help you get there. But also, someone like RuPaul, I've spent, you know, over 2.5, 3 hours. So it depends on what time you have to really enjoy the face and to make the most of what you know. So I've just applied that to the center of the face, and now I'll pick up her foundation. Like I said, Spackle, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Roxana Floyd, a wonderful makeup artist who's no longer with us, she used to apply concealer after foundation. There's no wrong way, there are no rules, and that's the one thing for me. I never think in terms of rules and regulations. I think in terms of what works best for you and getting to that place, that sweet spot where you want to be, right? Right?
Right.
I love y'all. Thank you. I know it's late. So now I'm just going to start at the jawline. Because I have to tell you, with women of color, there are always so many changing colors. But the one color you have to match has to be along the neckline. Iman is so much lighter in the center of her face, so much darker directly underneath the eye. So if I'm starting out in the center of the face trying to match the complexion, I'll most often always be lost. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're color matching, jawline is where you want it to work. Jawline is where you want it to happen.
Sam, I have a question.
I'm listening.
My name is Naomi, and it's really nice to finally meet you in person.
All I heard was Naomi.
Yes, that's all you need to remember.
Okay.
My question is, and not to go too far back, but with our skin tone, being that we are oily, or most of us are, you didn't use any primer, and I wanted to know why, or do you do that after with like setting powder or setting spray?
Wait, I missed the last part.
So you didn't use any primer, like a mattifier?
I didn't.
Is there anything that you do use now or after, like a setting spray or a powder or anything?
I'm gonna use powder after, but initially I don't want to use a primer because I don't want, I want to mix the foundation on her skin. I want it to stay malleable, I want it to stay moving, and the only way I can do that is to not apply a primer. Primers are great. I mean, I've done Patti LaBelle with Milk of Magnesia, which is the ultimate primer. I'm not saying to try this at home, but it is one of those things, and many people know about it. But what happens is, when you use primer, sometimes the foundation doesn't flow on as easily. I'm going to, by the time I'm done, you'll see, but you know, I'm constantly mixing colors and warming up the skin in a way that allows me to mix and play and build color and pigment to the skin. That's the beautiful part about working with women of color, is that you get a chance to really pile it on, and it just really doesn't look like anything. It really looks second skin after I'm done, of course. So yes, you're ahead of me. I will use powder for sure, but I didn't want to use a primer because I didn't want it to get in the way. Notice how I'm just using one section of the face first. This is like that one wall. I really want to see the color. I want to see how it goes on. I want to see the color. I want to see the consistency. And I kind of work from there. I'm sorry. I was coming to see her. See, that's not, see, you know. Okay, I can't see from here. It's all good. See. So what happens is, I just keep building until I get to a place where I feel the coverage is where I want it to be. And also you have to remember, the more foundation you place on, the more color of the foundation you're going to see. So it starts out to me as looking like a very pretty match. The more I apply of it, it might have gotten a little yellow. Oh wow, I see a little bit more olive in it. Oh wow, you know, she just came back from vacation. So, you know, give a warm welcome to the man himself. What's up, Michael? How are you, sir? Wait, we gotta do a video now. Okay, okay.
Sam, I have a question.
I'm listening and working.
Okay.
I feel like that client who's like, you know, you only have 45 minutes, right? Go ahead.
So when the model came out here, she was already prepped and ready. So what products did you use to prep the skin? And also, I follow you on Instagram, and I noticed that you use like the charcoal mask on your face. So what type of mask do you use in order to like prep the skin for makeup?
You know, a lot of times you don't have the time to prep skin in the way that a lot of people would think. While the hairstylist is working, a lot of times the things that I'm thinking about, at that point, I'm not addressing, excuse me, at that point, I'm not addressing skin texture. I'm not addressing the fact that she may need a scrub or even need a facial. Queen Latifah had a fine breakout. You know how sometimes you get like small heat bumps? And what's gonna happen is I have to work with that. If there's a calming lotion that I can use that I like, or a face mask, or something that speaks to puffiness, those are things that are very immediate. But for me, it's about thinking about what I need as a makeup artist and what's gonna get me through that day. It's not just about their skincare regimen. Those are things we can suggest. But when she sits in your chair, if I haven't seen you before, I have to deal with what's there. And so from the idea of skin prep, I'm not an esthetician. I deal with color and coverage. So I have to get you to where I need you to be. And if there's something I can do that's very quick, for sure. If it's like, you know, puffiness or, you know, eye pads or something like that, I think that's great. Or moisture, if they're coming off a flight or if they're extra tan and really dry, that helps to prime the skin for me. But there's not a whole lot that I do before I start what I'm doing. Cool. So now, I just keep working until I build the kind of coverage. So Cece, you scared of this cream foundation? Because, give her the mic, Jacqueline, please. I'm sorry, I'm gonna come back to you, I promise. I'm like, give her the mic.
I really like the way you applied that one and the way you're applying it nice and lightly. It doesn't look like it's being coated on very heavy.
Oh, but it is. Because I'm covering and I keep covering, I keep layering until I get to where I feel is the best coverage. You know, whether that's just going to be under her eyes, whether that's just going to be along the skin. And George, I can do camera 2 now. I didn't think I was going to get to the side. So if you guys want to, yeah, thanks. I'm listening, Cece.
It also may be just from my experience and the products I've used in the past that might feel just too heavy and a little too cakey. But yeah.
But see, I want you to get past those 2 words. heavy and cakey. You have to make friends with, and I say this really, especially to some of the artists who are really struggling with working with women of color, especially brown skin. And Gina's at the beginning of brown skin. She is hardly the range. I mean, I have an Essence cover with Alec Weck from the Sudan, who clearly, thank you, she's giving love. But what happens is, it can seem like a lot, and so you have to get comfortable with and get past kind of those two words, the heavy and cakey part. It's our job as artists to kind of manipulate foundation and powder to make it look like what looks like skin. I mean, that's the beauty of artifice. So now that I've done one side, I'm just basically matching my work on the other side. But I can take a question, because y'all know what I'm doing.
Hi Sam, this is Rachel Davis.
Hey, I can't hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm noticing that you're just using one sponge. Do you prefer sponges over brushes for your cream applications?
Yes, who asked that? Great question, yes. If I'm using a brush, I can never build this kind of coverage. You can slather it and move it along, but it won't sit in the way that I have product already in this sponge. So even if I chose to go over her eyelids, even if I were to go down her neck and really run this down her neck for a little bit more coverage, I can do that with a brush, but a sponge is going to hold on to a nice amount of product, giving me the opportunity to engage when I need more and when I need less, as opposed to having a brush, which is really ultimately just going to move it around. And if you notice the way I'm placing foundation, I want to put it where I want it to sit, because that is what coverage is about for me. I'm going into different areas, I'm making sure that I get the coverage in certain areas, and I can't do that with a sponge. Gina is so surprised today that I'm even getting to the right side of her face, or left side, my right side, because normally I'm a half-face guy, but I wanted to start earlier to really give you guys a full sense of what my foundation and powder looks like when I go to work.
All right, and another question, sorry.
No, look, I keep doing this.
What is that cream foundation you're using? And
Oh, this is Black Opal Stick Foundation. Y'all know I'm true to Black Opal. I created them long time ago. Thank you. And you know, I'm fortunate to still be able to use it. You know, in this day and age, there's so many great products. I still use Dermablend. I still use Dermablend. I use Cover FX. You saw I started with some AJ Crimson. I mean, you know, but you know, there's a time where you go backwards and you're just kind of like, wow, this wasn't broke. I love the finish. I love the amount of oiliness and the amount of weight that I'm given in the sticks. And so that works for me. See how I'm leaving the under eye area for last? How many of you all start under eye? I guess nobody. So when you start under eye, what do you start with? Concealer. But concealer though. But what happens is if I really work into this area right now before I do contour, before I really highlight and stuff, you know it's going to crease. So I'm not going to go into that area immediately. I'm laying something down, true, but I'm not going to overwork that area, because by the time I come back, I want it seamless, so when I set it with powder, it really looks great. Make sense? It's really a recipe for me and so many of us who are putting these things together in a way to, you know, not make our cake fall, really, and adding one step with the next. I always tell clients when they're at that point, you're like, don't look yet. This is not the pretty part of makeup yet. This is not. I'm still working on it. Give me 2 more minutes and you can look. So I heard Derek Rutledge did not do a demonstration, but he sang. You know what? I wish I could go around singing. So now I'm just looking to match and play, making sure my concealer that I did lay around the nose and the center of the face isn't too outstanding. I can always come back to that if I want more or less.
Hi, I have a question for you.
Okay.
First, thank you for being such an inspiration and coming out here to IMATS.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
It's okay,
Thank you so much
because
for
I'm
being
not looking at you.
an
I can't-
inspiration. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
And coming out all this way to IMATS. Seriously,
Oh, please.
it's amazing. But you were talking about a quick fix for dehydrated skin. What would you recommend?
Oh wow, those SK2 masks, how many of you all use those? I knew Yannick was gonna raise his hand, bougie, but they're expensive, but they're really great. The SK2 masks, actually I was turned on to those by Iman. She swears by them, so whenever she comes, she greets me at the door with a mask on, looking like Freddy Krueger. So yeah, or Jason, yes.
Hi, Sam.
What's up?
Super quick question for you. I know like beauty blenders and stuff like that are beginning to get really, really popular. Is your sponge damp or is it just dry?
If it were damp, what would happen, y'all? It would take away more coverage from the product. It would lessen it, which is a great tip for someone like Cece who feels like she doesn't want it heavy. So if you're using cream, you can wet your sponge and it goes on a lot, it dilutes it, or even moisturizer, because it dilutes it a bit so you get less of the full extent of coverage, okay? Continue.
Hello, big fan. I just wanted to ask,
Thank
what
you.
do you have, advice for those of us who have really, really different eyebrows to make them look similar?
Wait a minute, I missed the last part, it just went away. Do I have advice for?
For us of us that struggle with two different eyebrows to make them look similar, is there any like tricks or advice that you would recommend?
To make them look more similar?
Yes.
Well, you know, what was the saying, you guys? Eyebrows are sisters, not twins. So, I can work on it, and I think we know where it's like someone's arch is further out than the other. Sometimes they're higher. I mean, really, it's the tail and for the most part. So a lot of times, I'm really working on the outer part of the brow as opposed to the head and tail. But it's really about learning a face. And pencil, I'm very partial to using pencils because I'm a former fine artist. So I'm used to drawing a brow. So now that I've applied foundation and I've kind of worked into the coverage that I like, I can see that it's, maybe a little olive. Maybe I want to add a little color to this. Maybe I want to boost the complexion. Remember when I said a lot of times you start a foundation and you realize like, wow, it's gotten a little more olive, or it's gotten a little more golden than I would have liked. This one I pull out colors that, tan colors. This is Flory Roberts. You old. And when you have products that used to come, Fashion Fair and Flory Roberts used to always make red foundations. It's so important to have something red, something orange in your kit, especially if you're struggling working with a woman of color. These are those colors that when you think it works, you can add a little love to it, and that's what I think of colors like this. They're very red, and they're great when you're tan, especially for Caucasian consumers. They would always have colors that were tan, and they would speak to us. Well, what happens is, it's basically doing the same thing. You're adding a little bit of warmth, adding a little bit of bronzer, but I'm doing it in foundation instead of powder. Because once I add it in powder, I can't move it. I see you shaking your head, you guys know what I mean. Powder, you're done. So any kind of color adjustments you're gonna make, the best place to make it is now.
Okay, my question was.
No, I got you.
Oh,
I got
good,
you.
I have a loud mouth.
I'm so good. See, you're so close and so clear. So what happens is when you have a client who is very olive,
Yes.
And you know, you said very ashy. But what happens is I think of olive because it's a color that's not, it doesn't have a lot of undertone.
Yes.
It's almost like a biscuit color because there's no real yellow, there's no real gold to it.
Yes.
It's very flat.
Yes.
I mean, that's when bronzer comes in, that's when blush comes in. You can't be ahead of your own work.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we're looking for this beautiful finish from foundation. Foundation's supposed to do one job.
Yes.
Then when you introduce color,
Yes.
then when you introduce bronzer, then when you introduce blush, these are the things that start to take over. So if you're not starting to see the steps in your own work, you're gonna labor over something so long that actually is probably fine. How many of us have done that before? Okay, oh really, y'all perfect over there? It's fine, it's a perfect section over there. So what happens is, I mean, sometimes, I mean, you guys saw me come out and check my lighting because light is so important. Whether you are bringing your own light, whether you are adjusting the light on set so that you see more of the work and the finish and what you think it should be, those are the kinds of things that really can make or break your work. Do you kind of see how I've just added a little bit of warmth to the side? If you can't see, let me know. Because what happens is I'm pulling in a little bit more color. This is why I don't use a primer, because I really want to mix. Where someone's trying to mix on a palette, it's really easier on the face. If you started out with a color that is as close to her skin tone as possible, which was that cream foundation, then I introduce something that's a little warmer, I'm building coverage, I'm building color, and now I'm building the richness that you see in photos, because that's what's in our hands. That's what we're responsible for.
Hi Sam, it's Naomi again.
Hey Naomi with a great voice.
Another question for
You're
you.
being like my MC.
Oh sure, anytime.
Oh sure.
Quick question, more so about motivation and just self-growth. When you had days that you felt like, you know, is makeup for me? Should I keep doing this? Should I try something else? What did you tell yourself, or how did you motivate yourself?
Were you in my head yesterday? I'm saying, it happens all the time. You cannot do this. And let me say this, when you are an artist of a certain age who has experienced all of the social media trappings and influencers and the bombardment of what's going on online, and I love it, but you're not of it, it can be very challenging. I turn off the phone. I think that it's very important. I'm sorry, did I do that? Yes, I did. How is things pinching me? You get to a point in your career, I think we all take in a lot of information now and we don't even realize it.
Right.
Who asked that question?
I'm right here in the mustard.
Child, yeah, hey. I'm sorry. Wait, one sec, sorry y'all. Oh, I'm doing really good on time. As a makeup artist, you're like, oh yeah, I got plenty of time. That's great. I can take a breath. No, what happens is, and it's such a great question because I'll have to tell you that, I'm messing this up, I'm sorry y'all. There we go. My ears weren't so big.
They're perfect.
Thank you. I'm messing this up. How's that? Yeah, okay, I won't touch it again. What happens is a lot of times when you talk about being motivated, you have to talk about really what we're taking in and why we aren't motivated. If you're looking online at motivation, then a lot of times you're looking at a lot of splintered conversations. You're looking at a lot of greatness. You're looking at a lot of people working. You're looking at people traveling. You're looking at vacations. You're looking at so much stuff, and a lot of times it's too much for me to take in. When I talk